Hey, everybody, welcome to this episode of Compassion and Courage Conversations in Healthcare. I'm your host, Marcus Engel, and this is the podcast where we teach compassionate communication, provide perspective, and inspire resilience. Today, we're going to be doing all of those things with my new friend, Beth Cavenaugh. Beth, thank you so much for being with me today.
Yeah, Marcus, thank you for inviting me. I'm happy to be here.
So we got introduced via our mutual connections with Dominic and MJ Vachon. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. That is right. MJ's my cousin, and
Oh,
I
even
spoke
better.
at. I know. I know. I'm lucky because she's forced to be in my life forever. And Dominic has invited me to speak at Notre Dame a couple times to his hospice classes. So
Wonderful, wonderful, great people there, and you're based in South Bend, is that right?
no, I'm actually in New York right now, and I was living in Portland, Oregon for 33 years before this year.
Very good, very good. Well, welcome to New York, and I'm glad you're there. We'll get into that reason here in a little bit, I'm sure. But we should tell everybody that you're a nurse, and specifically have worked in hospice for a couple of decades now, right?
Yeah, 28 years or something. I'm taking a year off this year though.
Still 28 years of working in hospice, that's a calling.
Yeah, definitely. It was 28 years of nursing and then the last 18 years were in hospice. So yeah, it definitely was a calling. And when I walked into the hospice facility, I just felt like I landed professionally and it was something I just wanted to keep doing and get really skilled at. And I had a lot of amazing mentors. So that also helped.
So did you always know that you wanted to be a nurse? Or was
No,
that a no, not at all, huh?
no. I mean, it never even occurred to me to be a nurse until I did this program called Jesuit Volunteer Corps after college. And it was a 1 year program where I was put into nursing facilities and I helped with therapy programs through psychologists. And I was just like the transportation lady. I would go grab all the participants to come to our groups. And we were in a bunch of different nursing homes up in Auburn, Washington. And I just fell in love with working with geriatric population. That was really fun for me. And after I left that year, I started working on getting my nursing license.
It's a calling. It's a calling, right?
I was definitely called, yes.
Yeah. What kind of nursing did you do when you were first starting out?
Well, for 3 weeks, I worked in a nursing home and they put me on night shift and I was in charge of 33 patients and brand spanking new nurse. So that didn't go very well. I felt like my license was in jeopardy most of the time. So then he gave me the other floor, which was the Alzheimer's unit, and that was night shift, 22 Alzheimer's patients with no supportive staff. And that too felt like a difficult first job to have as a nurse. You know, when you're a fresh nurse, you really need good mentors and preceptors all around you. You need physicians. You need a support team, CNAs. You could ask questions all the time, and that was not available to me. So I quit that job, and then I went to work. My first year and a half was in between two jobs at a AIDS hospice in Portland back in 1996, and OHSU, which was an internal medicine floor.
Very good. I've worked with OHSU in the past and been around Portland a bit. So got some mutual connections there. My wife still has family that lives just outside of Portland and
Oh, really?
try to
Okay.
get up there. Yeah. So you and I got in contact, like a year ago,
Mhm.
because you were interested in the narrative medicine program at Columbia. And even though I haven't been in that program active for now, 10 or 12 years, it sounds like I gave a pretty good recommendation because you're in there now.
Yeah, no, you definitely helped me to make the decision to go if I got in. I think I called you in the fall. And yeah, it just sounded like it opened up pathways and options that you didn't really know existed, and kind of like helped you understand medicine with a really different framework than most people learn about medicine.
Yeah, the human side of medicine, right? Not
Exactly.
the chemistry, not the anatomy and physiology and biomed, all that, but the human side.
Yeah.
What did you think you wanted to do with this master's level degree?
Well, I was thinking that it was more focused around writing about narratives, which definitely is some of that, because I'd been writing for the last 7 years about end of life care. And, but since I've been there, my brain has been altered in a lot of ways. And I'm not really sure where I'm going to be going with it, but it's definitely opened my eyes to a different way of really seeing a patient and how you can show up and be exquisitely present to your patient, and also understanding that um, there is this connection that's really important to foster between patient and nurse. And as that is fostered and nurtured, then you develop this patient relationship, right? And trust is built. And as you get to know your patient, um, which it could be through their stories, it could also be through their medical history or their family stories, you can hopefully serve them in a way that's profound and healing on a lot of levels, ideally physically, but also um, emotionally and spiritually.
So, what do you think that most people get wrong about end of life care?
I think people are really afraid of it, and I think it's a missed opportunity to not show up when somebody's dying, or to be afraid of being around somebody who's dying, or even has died. I think, so much of our grief is dependent on how we showed up for our loved one, when they died, and then after the death. I mean, and I think if we can try to ideally kind of cultivate a space that is where you can show up and be present to your loved one, and the patient is the main decision maker and player in their death. Um, I think it helps with your grief down the road, the one who's left behind. If you've been able to help your loved one, um, exit this world in a really peaceful, blessed way.
I've it's been a while since I've had a family member in hospice, and even then, I think what is it in national averages that a patient is only on hospice for a week or so before they die, and
Yeah,
that's a shame because someone could be receiving hospice care for months and months that would help them greatly, but often they don't reach out because probably, as you said, people are afraid.
yeah. I mean, it's fear on both sides, right? It's the patient's afraid to talk about it. Um, the family member doesn't really want to bring it up, and so it's this kind of constant tension of knowing that your loved one's declining, but not actually addressing it directly, which it's a scary conversation to have. But I always tell people, if they can zoom out a little bit, and so say your mom's been declining, and if you can zoom out a little bit and look at the last 6 months of her life, the last 3 months of her life, and really kind of take a wide-eyed open approach to how does she look now? How is she eating? Is she losing weight? Is she getting around as much as she was? And if you really notice that she has been declining, you can actually call up their primary care physician and see if they can get a referral for hospice. Nothing is a binding contract. Hospice can come over to the house and talk to the family about what hospice is and how they can help them. Yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of patients who they're on hospice for a day to 3 days because, everything happens in a moment of crisis when somebody's in the hospital. So I always feel like if you can find and have hospice help sooner, it's just it's not like the finest, most exquisite care you'll ever have, but it is very supportive care that can really assist families. And the reason I said it's not exquisite care is because hospice isn't always 24/7 care. A lot of times it's done in the home, and the family and friends are expected to take care of the one who's dying, and hospice comes in and they support them while the family is the main caregiver.
And for people who wouldn't be in the know, what does that support look like?
Okay, so for instance, if my mom was on hospice back in 1998, and so we had I went down there to be her main caregiver, and I was a nurse. I was a qualified nurse, which I was thankful for. Um, because I had to deal with the oxygen tanks and the medications and the suppositories and the baths. And but we had a hospice nurse come in and visit about 3 times a week, and she would come in and talk about medications, how my mom's symptoms were. My mom had some struggles with breathing, so she was using morphine at the time, and the nurse would really help me figure out how to increase the medication if I needed. And I was also able to call hospice 24/7. So 3 a.m., I remember there was she had a pain issue, and I called up the hospice nurse, and she came out at 3 a.m. and helped me troubleshoot it. So that was really nice. And there's also a CNA, a certified nursing assistant or aide, who can come out and help with bathing and light housekeeping. And they're always just magic. I mean, I love every CNA I've ever worked with. They provide really, talk about compassion, compassionate care. And there's also social workers and chaplains, and they can come out about weekly or every other week and visit with the patient. And I know for my mom, she was very connected with the social worker. That felt like the one person who got through to my mom's heart and soul. I tried to, but just as her daughter, she wasn't going to be intimate with me in an emotionally vulnerable way. That was never really our relationship, but the social worker was really able to connect with her and help her process her death, which I am so grateful for. So that's essentially what hospice can look like when you have hospice support and your loved one is in the home.
And what about leading those conversations when people are scared to talk about the potentially white elephant in the room? Um, what are some ways? This seems like a very narrative medicine view to take. What are the ways to lead some of those discussions?
Yeah, I mean, I think with the patient, you can talk to them about their decline and just say, okay, so say for instance, my dad was declining, and I would say, Dad, you've lost like 20 pounds in the last 6 months. Like, how do you feel like things are going? How's your health? How's your strength? How's your appetite? And I think maybe starting with a real zoomed out perspective about, even just one symptom that you see. Or um, I know a gentleman who has a really hard time with mobility and confusion and shortness of breath. So I imagine the family talking to him and saying, "Hey, Dad, you're really unsteady when you walk. You've already had 3 falls. I feel like the next one could be one that ends you up in the hospital or with a fracture or even worse. Um, can we talk about options?" So I think just kind of setting up the conversation where it's not accusatory, but just asking them to talk about what they need and what they want. And a lot of times, I was saying we'll have somebody on hospice for 3 days because they end up in the hospital and there's a crisis. A lot of times that's also how it looks. And because I think it's really important to value the patient's autonomy and decision making, sometimes it's really hard for the wife or the daughter, the son to back off, but sometimes it just takes a series of conversations, gentle conversations along the way. So I would say if you're wondering, you should start the conversation now, and it may not land at all, but maybe like 3 weeks later or a month later, something else has come up. Maybe every time when people are kind of declining and they land in the hospital for something, a asthma attack, pneumonia, UTI, their baseline is usually a bit lower when they come back. So they're not operating quite at the capacity they were. So, you'll have the opportunity to talk to them again about it.
It'll keep happening, right? Something will keep happening. The opportunity will, the opportunity will come up again.
Yeah, it will.
So one of the questions that I always ask my students at the beginning of every semester is a question that I'll ask you, and that is to share a time that someone has been, as you said earlier, exquisitely present. I love that terminology. How can we be exquisitely present for our patients? But a time that someone has been exquisitely present for you or you have been for another. Does that prompt to bring any stories to mind?
Yeah, I just thought of one of my coworkers. I'm going to talk about her and her exquisite presence and compassion. I was actually at a new facility and she was training me, and we were working on the night shift. And I was, they were my patients, but she was my preceptor, my boss lady, my mentor, and I've been doing this work for a long time. It's just that I was at a new facility, and my nurse friend, I think she'd been a nurse for just 2 years, but God, like the way she showed up for the patients was always so mind and heart blowing. So we're doing our rounds. It's probably 2 a.m. And she said, your patient in 15 is actively dying. And he had been declining. It just kind of came up suddenly. So when somebody is actively dying, it's generally within hours that they'll die. And so she said, I'm going to go in the room. You call the family. And she ran as fast as she could to the room. And she went to his bedside and she held his hand. I went to call the family. I came back to the room and I sat on the other side. And watching her with the patient was just unbelievable. The way he was actively dying, which usually patients, when they're actively dying, they're kind of in a comatose state. Their eyes are closed. They look like they're sleeping. But this gentleman had his eyes open and he was still with us, but actively dying. And within about 15 minutes, my nurse friend, she was holding his hand and she just locked eyes with him and she said, we are here with you. We are not leaving your side. Don't worry. And he would start breathing and get kind of nervous. And she'd say, it's okay. It's okay. We'll get you some medication. And then I'd go run and get medication and I'd come back and give him his medication. And she would kind of like laugh with him. Not that he was laughing, but I mean, she was so gentle and sweet and kind. And it was just such a beautiful space for him to be in. And he died, like I said, in those 15 minutes. And it looked like there was this one episode, one moment where I said, don't worry, I called your wife. She'll be here soon. And he looked at my nurse friend and he shook his head no. And I thought, oh my God, what have I done? And it was in that moment, he looked like my patient, you could tell he was like willing himself to die quickly because in my opinion, because we didn't talk about this, he didn't want his wife to witness the death. And so he died very quickly. And I was, of course, the one who had to go to the front door when the wife came in, and she drove like hell to get there. And, I told her that he had just died, and she just dropped to my feet. And it was, I always feel so bad for, as a hospice nurse, my thing is always to get families there as quickly as possible, because I feel like that time is really sacred if you can be there when somebody is dying. And so it's something I feel really strongly about. And, my patient clearly didn't want that. So she came in afterwards. I mean, she could barely walk. She was so devastated by missing the death. But we brought her into the room, and still, I really feel like after somebody dies, there is this spiritual presence that's still there, and it still feels very sacred to me. And so I always invite family, if they want to come to the bedside after their loved one has died and be in that space in whatever way they want to. There are one of the two of the hospice facilities that I worked in, we would do an end of life ritual and involve the family members with that. And that would always, was so beautiful. And, I don't view it as closure anymore. I view it as just, another chapter, that is over. So, yeah, anyway, that's a whole nother topic. But yeah, witnessing my nurse friend be with that patient in such a tender way was really moving to me. And it still moves me to this day. That was years ago.
Yeah, and those are the kind of experiences that stick with you, like you
Yeah.
said.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful example of just being there. Exquisite presence, as you said. I'm gonna keep that term for a while.
Mm.
Exquisitely present. I love it.
Do you have
I
a
love it.
story?
Well, my story primarily is when the the night that they rolled me in the emergency department, and Jennifer, who was the tech who held my hand the whole night and just kept saying, "I'm here." And when she said, "I'm here," that let me know that I was not alone, and that my suffering was being witnessed and acted upon by somebody. So that's why I always bring that question up, because um, we can all relate to that, right? We've all had someone who has been there for us.
Yeah.
Being there for another person, unless you're in a professional caregiver role like yourself, might be a little harder to bring to mind. But yeah, having been the recipient of that exquisite presence, I like to bring out these types of narratives, because that's where the learning is.
Yeah, and I mean, those are the things, like for caregivers, I feel like, or for nurses, I feel like those are the stories that they're the sweet spot of nursing, right? I mean,
Mm,
it's why you keep going back, because you've had these amazing connections with patients. And when you can be in a place of presence like that, where it's given and it's received, like you received it, Marcus.
mhm.
So, and that started your healing journey, right? Like that moment.
And at the same time, I think whenever you truly are there for someone else, you are also receiving, right?
And
That
yes.
whether that's karmic or
Yeah.
the law of reciprocity, whatever, I think whenever we give, we are receiving it as well.
Right. No, like, I mean, as I'm sharing the story, I feel like my immune system has been boosted,
Mhm.
like I feel like there's a cellular shift in my body because of this story. So yeah,
Mhm.
I know what you're saying.
Good stuff. So now that you're in the narrative medicine program, what's been your biggest takeaway so far? Can you surmise it up into a single experience or scenario?
No.
No.
Um, no, I can't. But one of the most exciting, one of the most exciting things for me was doing narrative medicine workshops with students, and that is when you read a little bit of a text or look at a painting, and 10 people are around the room talking about it, and it is an exercise in um, close attention to something, a text or a painting, and everybody's sharing their perspectives, and all perspectives are different. And so everybody's perspectives are shifting in real time, which invites humility into the room. And then everybody's listening to each other, which invites witnessing into the room. And so the workshop has felt like a big piece of magic for me, and mystery, honestly. I mean, it's a beautiful, and I also feel like it can be healing for people who are in it, so, and for the facilitators. So I feel like that's been the best experience. I mean, a lot of
it's
it's been amazing.
it's so amazing to me whenever a narrative medicine workshop is run right, to see the amount of change that comes over the group just in a 45 or 60-minute session. To see that people, the little light bulb goes on up above, and some connections are made that may have not been there had they not taken this specific time and had some space, as you said, to fully explore these ideas.
Yeah, are you doing narrative medicine workshops?
I do, and I also do the same thing for nurses and call it narrative nursing, and I love that too, because this, even though we're talking about narrative medicine, this is not exclusive to doctors or nurses or even healthcare professionals.
Right.
This is really human beings recognizing the humanity of other human beings. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're doing that. I do feel like, yeah, nurses need healing constantly and consistently. And, I think the workshops can be really invigorating for them. Yeah, so that's lovely you're doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So, with my last question that I have for you today, let's say you had the world's largest mountain and the world's largest billboard on top of that mountain. What is the message that you want to broadcast to humanity?
Hmm. I mean, the first thing that came up was you can never really know another person. So be humble and a soft, uh, show up with a soft presence. So you can be more porous, to, so that my, I'm glad my billboard is big because works on it. How about show up with humility?
Show up with humility. I love that. And I love what you said earlier, exquisite presence. How can we be exquisitely present to another person? That's that might even be more important than than the humility aspect. But
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, let's put that up on the billboard.
yeah, good stuff. Well, Beth Cavenaugh, thank you so much for being with me today. If people want to know more about you and the work that you're doing, where can they find that information?
Yes, I have a website, bethcavenaugh.com, and I have two books that are on that website and on Amazon also.
Tell me about your books before we go.
Oh, yeah. I have one that's called The Power and Pain of Nursing, and it has 30 self care practices to restore your compassion. I actually wrote that with MJ and Dominic. And it's a
Wonderful.
really short, sweet book for, I mean, nurses, written by me, a nurse, and it's just simple practices that you can kind of, reinvigorate your when you're feeling depleted. And I wrote the book because I needed it myself. And the other book is Some Light at the End. That is a book written to hospice patients, but it's for hospice caregivers as well. Anybody who's, wondering what hospice is and what it looks like and how to care for somebody who's on hospice. I wrote it, just with all of my hospice wisdom that I've gained over the last many years. And because I feel like a lot of families and patients are really afraid of death just because they don't know what to expect. They don't know what it looks like. And one of my big missions is just to eliminate some of the mystery so that people can show up. When you have more knowledge and information, you just feel more secure and less anxious. So I just want people to show up, with as much love and presence as they can.
Love it. And I love the title of your book too. Some light at the
Yeah,
end. That's
yeah,
great. That's great.
good.
Well, Beth, again, thank you so much for being with me today. And listeners, thank you for being on this episode of Compassion and Courage, Conversations in Healthcare. Again, I'm your host, Marcus Engel, and please visit marcusengel.com for any keynote speaking needs, narrative medicine or narrative nursing workshops, and just for general information on the kind of work that I do with healthcare professionals, marcusengel.com. And we will see you on the next episode of Compassion and Courage.